Welcome to the Ben and Lauren Show. I am Ben, and here is Lauren, and it is a Sunday night. Sunday night?
No,
Oh,
it's
it
Saturday
is
night.
Saturday night.
We had two Sabbaths in a row, and it's probably going to throw off the rest of our week.
That's because, it kind of felt like a Sunday today because Friday we treated like a Sabbath, and today we treated like a Sabbath, so it feels like
Didn't feel like a Sunday to me. On a
Sunday.
Sunday, normally I'd be running around doing laundry and stuff, but it did feel like everything's a little mixed up.
So we've got all sorts of things planned, kind of piled up for Sunday, but Sunday, tomorrow, we are going to go visit my grandma Turner out in Dearborn.
So that means that some of those things are just going to have to wait.
Yep. And it'll be a very nice day. It sounds like
Right.
there's a train exhibit that we're going to go see, and I think that would be really cool.
Well, also, some of the projects we wanted to do tomorrow involve being outside, and it turns out we appear to be expecting snow tonight.
So we hear.
I really hope we don't get snow. Our cherry blossoms are just starting to peek out.
That's going to mess everything up.
If it snows, it's a little better than frost, but my guess is we'll lose the cherry crop.
That would be sad.
We hardly ever get snow at the end of. I don't remember the last time we got snow in the end of April. This is practically May 1st. Is May 1st on Monday or Tuesday?
I don't
I think
even
it's
know.
Monday. It's the day after tomorrow. We're getting snow in May.
So it's been a while since we've done a Ben and Lauren show. I can't remember when the last time we did it, but maybe 2 weeks ago.
It was 2 weeks.
2 weeks. So sorry everyone for being a whole week late. But it is Passover is past, and the first week of unleavened bread has just completed. In fact, Thursday was the last day. Friday. My day's mixed
Yesterday.
up.
Yeah, you're still mixed up. That's
Friday.
why we Sabbath yesterday.
Friday was the last day, and that was the high Sabbath. That completes the 7 days of unleavened bread. And we're gonna probably still eat unleavened bread until we go to the grocery store.
Wow, we have no bread and we have no yeast to make bread. Although I started reading a new book with my girls that I used to read when I was a little girl, and it's about a girl who lives above a bakery. And it keeps talking about this fun stuff that they make, and the first thing it talks about are these cherry buns. And the girls say, "Can we make cherry buns?" It's like, well, they're all yeast. So they are waiting expectantly for unleavened bread to be over so they can make cherry buns.
We'll make cherry buns sometime.
After I go to the grocery store.
So we had a good Passover. It's not really a Passover. It's a Passover remembrance, and we just did it with our family. We didn't have anyone come over for it, and I thought it went fairly smoothly.
It did, and the girls were good. Daniel was a little bit squirrely, but pretty much he sat on your lap for the whole thing.
So we got coloring books for them to color, Passover themed coloring books.
The table looked crazy, but they were happy. I saw a lot of people posting pictures of these beautiful Passover tables, with the crystal and all these flower arrangements, and very beautiful. And well, we got out our china. We do that every Friday anyway, so it wasn't that much different than usual. But there's no way we could fit flower arrangements and things on our table. We had crayons and colored pencils and sheets of
We
paper.
got a, form, function.
But the kids paid attention, and they've listened to the Bible so many times now. They know the whole story by heart.
Yes, they do.
So
it's a reminder for them. We do it for them. I mean, we do it for us, but we also do it for them specifically so that they can remember. And it's not just a story, it's an opportunity for them to actually kind of participate in the story. We actually have live action events that we do. More than just coloring, but actually doing things. One of the favorite things they like doing is getting the last of the leaven out before sundown. We open up the door wall and basically they throw the leaven. We thought we already got rid of all the leaven, but thankfully we missed something.
Ben went scouring through the pantry to see if there was, and it turned out we had borrowed some little sandwich bread from Mom next door, and there was like one piece left.
Perfect.
I was like, but I cleaned the whole pantry.
So we ripped it up and had the girls, even Daniel, throwing it out to the birds, to the squirrels.
Daniel discovered matzah this year, but more importantly, he discovered butter to put on the matzah.
Yeah, he loves dipping the butter. Dip the matzah in the butter.
Today he was sitting on the counter next to me while I'm making breakfast, and I look over and he has the entire stick of butter out of the butter dish and unwrapped. He's taking a bite out of it, and I looked at him, and he takes it away, and he goes,
That boy likes butter.
I put the butter stick down and back away slowly.
One of the favorite things about spring is all the butter goes on sale, so we stock up on butter.
Oh, we did this year too. It went
Hmm
on sale for $2.50 for Land O'Lakes butter
For
for
name
1 pound.
brand, that's good these days.
Normally that goes for $5.49 a pound around here. So
Now you made a new type of unleavened bread this year, right?
I did. Courtney Smith posted a picture of some bread that she had made, and we tried our first couple Passovers to make matzah. And what's your review on our first matzah that
It
we
didn't
made?
turn out that great. It was kind of dry and rubbery and just it wasn't good. I tried getting it crisp, but then it would just sort of burn and get even more rubbery. It
It
just
basically had the look and taste of cardboard.
it tasted pretty awful.
So we have not really tried to make it again since. We buy unleavened bread and we eat it, which is really the way the Jewish people make it. They poke it, pierce it, and bake it like a cracker because their feeling is that if you allow the bread to be soft, you might be allowing leaven to develop in it.
It's very much like a cracker,
So it's like a saltine cracker.
and
Yeah.
it tastes good. I like it, especially dipped in butter. But Lauren made this soft bread unleavened, and it was just great.
Well, it turned out that Courtney posted that she was making this kind of bread, and I looked it up because she didn't really have a recipe. And it turns out that it was a kind of bread that is recorded having been made in Egypt. It was made very, very long, long time ago, and
So it's more accurate.
it was the unleavened bread. And when I made it, I discovered why the question in many of the traditional Seder is why on some nights do we eat leavened bread and some unleavened? My feeling before was, why on earth would you ever eat unleavened bread by choice?
Because it's good.
Well, the trick that I didn't understand was to use it was basically it's flour and salt and water. And the trick is that you use room temperature water and you knead the bread just like you would normally with yeast in it, but you knead it and develop the gluten or the stretchiness in the flour. You don't have to do that real long. And then you just roll it flat like you would if you were making pita bread or Syrian bread. And you can either bake it on a pizza stone at a real high temperature, just like you would pita bread or
Hmm
naan bread or any of those flat kind of breads. Or, as was suggested by Courtney, get out a frying pan, put some olive oil in it, and actually fry the bread.
And that's good.
And
That's
that
the way to
was
do it.
fantastic.
You fry it in olive oil just and you can still dip it in butter
Or hummus or
or
anything else.
hummus or anything.
You had it as hot dog buns or hamburger
Hamburger
buns.
bun. It was great as a hamburger bun. We had pizzas on it one night,
We had pizza on
and
it
that
one
was
day. It
great.
made a pretty good pizza crust.
Hmm
So we now have 3 or 4 boxes of matzah that we never ate. Now I'm gonna have to figure out something to do with that.
Matzo ball soup.
Because we ate the bread I was making all week. Plus it was really warm,
Hmm
and we were
You know, we got the
barbecuing every
matzah.
night.
We got the matzah at a pretty good price. So
Well, we were barbecuing every night, so I would mostly bake it in the frying pan, then I'd take it out and put it on the grill. So it actually got grilled like grilled flatbread.
and that's I think also why it was so good.
I ate more bread than I should have this week. I gained 3 pounds and had to lose it again.
Hey, it's a feast of unleavened bread, so you feast.
Well, yes.
There's no diets during a feast.
Yes, there are. There are when you're already pregnant and you're 20 pounds overweight to start with, and you're trying not to be out of control with that.
So we had another big event. Abigail lost her tooth. It's been wiggly. It's in her hair, and we went to the dentist for our, semi-annual teeth cleaning, and the doctor took a look at it and said, "You want me to pull it out?" Pop.
Well, she's been diligently wiggling it, but the problem that she was having is that her new tooth came in way behind, like back in her mouth, and it wasn't pushing out the old tooth, but it was right in the right place where you couldn't wiggle the tooth in such a way to break the root that was remaining. So it completely blocked off her ability to wiggle it properly, plus it didn't dissolve the root under the tooth like it
It
was
was
supposed to.
past due to come out.
So she was getting a little frustrated with that tooth, and she'd wiggled it and wiggled it and turned it and wiggled it. She was trying every way she could to get the silly thing out.
And she didn't cry. She didn't even say it hurt at all.
It didn't seem to.
It's strange.
So he asked her, he says, well, do you want me to, I asked him to take a look at it. I said, should we just let this go? Or should we try to pull it? And he says, well, it'll probably come out on its own, but he asked Abigail, want me to pull it out? And she says, yes. She's like, get this thing out of here.
See, I was a wimp when I was her age about teeth. I wouldn't let anyone touch them, and I would just wiggle, wiggle, wiggle until it just, by happenstance fell off. But I would never pull them.
She tried so hard to pull that tooth.
Yeah.
And then she suggested that while he was at it, he should pull the teeth on either side since this new tooth was so big that it really needed extra room. So could he pull the other two out while he was at it? He said maybe he'll just pull the one.
So the tooth immediately next to it's now wiggly, and she's been diligently wiggling it back and forth.
She's more like me.
Yeah.
That's what I did with my teeth. If it had the least little bit of wiggle, I wiggled that thing
I
till
hope
I
all
could
of our
get it
children are
out.
like you. I hope they all follow in Abigail's example because I was a wimp about it.
Well, Susanna was very excited that Abigail lost her tooth. But Susanna is not the kind of person I think who will do what Abigail's doing.
Yeah, I was in the waiting room with Daniel, and Abigail came out, and she just had this big grin on her face. Look, there's a big missing tooth. She's got a little necklace that she carries around with her every day now.
She
The
wears
tooth.
her tooth necklace.
That's
It's
gonna
her
get old
prized
after a while.
it's her prized possession right now.
After a couple of years, that'll get old.
Well, our kids are so close in age
Hmm.
that this is the first tooth that's lost, but we're
First,
gonna have teeth flying out right and left
this
around
is
here
the
in another
first
year or two.
tooth. But I was counting all the teeth that we're going to be losing someday, and between all of our children, there's going to be loose teeth and falling out teeth all over the place.
So
The novelty will die off fast. But right now, it's exciting.
Daniel has just finished getting his last teeth. Oh, and that means that the eczema on his feet is finally clearing up. Daniel has the worst eczema
Yeah,
on
it
his
looks
feet you've
terrible,
ever seen. We've tried so
but
many
it's
things
over.
to heal it. It is finally this week, like it's done with every set of his teeth, like his front teeth, his bottom two teeth. He'll get eczema somewhere on his body. With his front teeth, it was all over his back. And it's really bad no matter what I do about it. And then as soon as the teeth come in, it's almost like magic. It just, poof, it vanishes.
Well, the problem is, though, he's got a habit of scratching.
Now he's developed, yeah.
Scratch and scratch and scratch, and now he's getting scabs, and you just got to stop his obsessive scratching.
So now he's got scabs all over his feet because he's so used to scratching them, and the scabs are itchy. So then he keeps scratching the scabs and making it worse. So we've got to break that cycle so his feet can heal.
Yeah. Now, we also noticed something about the way he walks.
Yeah.
So basically, one of his legs is kind of, that's hard to describe. He
He
puts his weight on the side of his foot, rather than putting his foot
and he
down
turns
flat.
it in pretty sharply. His left leg he walks normally with his foot slightly turned out and with his leg looks real straight and the muscle and everything's developed. But his right leg looks really crooked and bowed because he walks to the outside of his foot and he
Hmm.
turns his foot in besides. So like he stumps along.
Yeah.
It looks very awkward.
So we came up with a solution, right?
Well, thankfully, my aunt is a physical therapist, and so we saw her last Sunday, and I said, could you please take a look at Daniel's leg and tell me what you think? And she looked at it and she says, oh my. And she said, well, I think the first thing I would try, before you do anything any more invasive, is to try something called kinesiology taping. I think I'm saying that right.
Is that why it has a K on it?
Yeah, KT,
KT.
kinesiology. Kinesiology? I'm probably mispronouncing it. But the idea is you use this slightly stretchy, firm tape to retrain muscles in your body. You pull them into the right shape with the tape, and then it retrains your muscles so that it holds your body,
Now,
various parts of your body in the
now we
correct
haven't
shape.
put that on Daniel yet, right? We're waiting for the
I,
scabs to heal up.
yeah, she suggested that we needed to work really hard on making sure that the skin was healed because if you put that kind of tape over broken skin, it could really be painful.
Well, what's sad is that because he's got these scabs now, if the scabs would just heal up, his foot would be
Yeah,
fine.
that's what you were
Eczema's
saying
gone,
earlier.
but he breaks the scabs off and it bleeds,
Right.
and it's a mess.
But he is doing much better because I've been very diligently
Lotion.
I've been putting ointment on it. Um, not just lotion, but ointment to heal the scabs.
And we were using oils for a while too.
Yeah, we found that frankincense oil in an unscented lotion, we were able to bring the eczema down initially with that. But it doesn't do a lot for the scabs. That
It
I'm
also
using,
stings when you put it on
yeah,
the open wounds.
it would burn. His feet would turn bright red. So we had to back off how much we were using, but that did bring the eczema down. So
Yeah.
now I'm using like a lanolin based um, ointment that seems to be healing his scabs really quickly.
And Abigail's also been learning her math skills. We've been continuing with the Miles Jones math curriculum.
Yep. And it's going really well. You can tell the difference in ages between our children. Um, Elena's still working on learning to count to 10 forwards and backwards. Susanna is learning how to write all her letters without writing them backwards
I
and
don't know
doing
if you can
various
see
weird
in the
things.
picture, there's a little.
Yeah, we have these posters on the wall to help them
There's the poster.
practice their numbers. And Abigail is now doing pages of addition and subtraction problems.
And she got 100%.
She's doing 100. Well, yeah, her last one. I think she's doing 20 per page right now.
I was really impressed.
And she's getting 100% on them, and she seems to be having the most fun. She enjoys the numbers. She's playing little games with us, like saying, "So what would 4 plus 4 plus 5 be?" Things like that. How many would 100 hundreds be?
No, all the kids are asking
They're
questions like that now, aren't they?
they're all doing stuff like that. So they seem to be enjoying it. Abigail the most, but it's probably because it's the easiest for her.
Mm-hmm.
And so I've been really pleased with how they're doing. But I was really pleased. You want to tell the story or you want me to tell it?
You can tell.
Somebody was visiting Ben's parents, and I mentioned to Mom that it was a big week for Abigail because she lost her tooth and she's doing whole pages of math problems now. And the visitor asked Abigail, "Oh, really? Well, what's 5 plus 5?" And Abigail says, "Oh, that's 10. What's 10 plus 10? 10 plus 10 is 20. And then he asked a question that I thought was really unusual. He said, "Well, what if I wanted it to be 19? And she said, "Well, that would have to be 10 plus 9. You can't make 10 plus 10 20." And he said, "But what if I wanted to have 10 plus 10 be 19? And she said, "You can't make 10 plus 10 19. 10 plus 10 is 20. That just is how it is." And I thought,
well, some children probably would say, well, if you want it to be, I guess you could think it could be, but it wouldn't be.
well, I was thinking that in the world that Abigail has to grow up in,
Things
the
just have to be.
the understanding that 10 plus 10 is always 20. It really does not matter what you want it to be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's important.
Your will and desire is not going to change simple math.
No, and your will and desire does not dictate the world around you.
That's really what it comes down to.
Yeah, and so she was very matter of fact. No, things just are what they are. You
Mm-hmm.
can't make them into something they're not. So I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, colors are all relative. This might look white to me, but what if someone else says that's pink? Who am I to argue? I'm not them.
But if the person told you that they were colorblind and that looks pink to me,
Well, that would be an explanation.
it would be. But they wouldn't be trying to change the world around them. They're just telling you what they see.
Well, to each their own. It's fine. You can call that pink all day long. You can say it's pink. But if you start trying to convince the whole world to change what we see now as white into pink, then
Instead of saying, "I'm colorblind, I have a problem."
yeah, exactly. Everyone must conform to my way of thinking.
And so I see pink and everyone else has to see that too. Yeah. I don't really know that that's like color blindness works. I don't think you see white as pink. But anyway,
It's just a thought.
I think you would see pink as white.
If you stare at the sun long enough, white does look pink. Don't ask how I know.
You had an interesting event this week. You decided to get something new.
Oh yeah, my prop. This is my phone, and it's been driving me crazy. This thing I think I got this back in like, what, maybe 2015, 2016?
It was before Elena was born.
Was it? I've had this a long time.
So
This is
2015
this is called
probably.
a first generation Moto E. And the reason it's first generation, it was the very first of its kind. Now they're currently up to the seventh generation, and I finally am upgrading my phone. If you
Wow.
notice, there's no front camera at all.
The real problem with it is that their speaker hasn't been working properly. So for him to use it, I watch him and he sits there and he bangs it on
You
his
see that
hand to
little
get the
smudge there?
speaker.
That's not a smudge. That's actually the screen that's not working right. There's like a damage to the screen. It's not cracked or anything.
Well, it seems to be gradually losing touch with reality. It's very difficult to charge. There's been a few times where we've shut it down and it has refused to start up
The
again.
battery only gets about maybe 4 or 5 hours
Right. So
tops.
it's reaching the end of its life.
It's done. There's only 4 gigabytes of memory in here, so it's just jammed with.
Every time you try to do anything, it tells you it's out of memory.
It's constantly out of memory. So this is finally reaching the end of its useful life, which I mean it's still in good shape, but I'm going to have to once I get everything transferred, I'm going to have to make myself throw it away. I'm a hold on to kind of guy, but I have to throw it away. I have to just pitch it. So the new phone, once I get it all set up, supposedly has a 3 day battery life. That's what I'm excited
That's what
about.
I hear.
So we'll test that. We'll put that to the test.
He must have said that about 25
I'm
times over
excited
the
about
past
that.
3 days.
Going from 4 hours to 72 hours. I mean, come on. Anyway, it also is going to have a better camera. Might even have better audio. So cool.
So you're very excited
I'm
about
very
that.
excited. We can do
We
things like
expecting it Monday?
yeah, we can do some FaceTime. Can might be able to do Partico posts on the go faster and easier. Just little things like that. I'm excited about.
I'm happy that you're getting a new phone. I know it's been frustrating you for quite a while.
Yeah, it has been.
So
So that is something probably for the next Ben and Lauren show I can show off my new phone. But for now, I got this thing to contend with.
we are pretty slow to make purchases.
And this is not an expensive phone. I mean, there's a lot of phones out there
Yeah.
that are up there in dollars. This is an economy model phone, but
Plus, you managed to bargain some money off of
I
it.
did. I did. I basically I called him up. Or no, I actually was chatting with someone. I said, "How long have I been with you guys?" I said, "Well, you've been here with us since 2015. Thank you." I said, "Oh, well, that's good. I'm looking at getting a new phone. I'm looking at this one." And I asked a
Oh,
bunch of questions about
excuse
it.
me.
And after all the questions were answered, I said, "Well, are there any promos or discounts?" And she says, "Oh, let me check." Next thing you know, $50 off my phone. Thumbs up.
Which for that phone was a pretty significant
It
discount.
was a $250 phone, so it's a pretty big chunk taken
Yeah,
off.
that's a pretty nice
And
discount for you.
and these days, a $200 phone is El Cheapo.
Well, I hear that the iPhones are going for like $1,000, and wasn't isn't Droid releasing some phone that's $2,000? It's a
You
fold up
you do
touchscreen
realize
phone.
I got this phone for $50, right?
Oh no, I didn't know that.
Yeah, 50 for this and 50 for yours.
Well,
So
that
I got
explains how we got two phones.
that's how we got two phones for $100.
Okay, well,
So I'm really going extravagant on this new phone by that standard.
well,
It's only taken how many years? 4 years.
it's not that long, but I'm
In technology time, that's a very long
that was the
time.
first smartphone you'd ever purchased.
Yes, this is my first smartphone. I've gotten a lot of good use out of it. So the
That's
fact that it's lasted me 4 years means it's a pretty good quality phone.
it's been dropped a bunch of times, which is I think that might be why it's not working properly. But the
And no
screen never shattered. It's
no
not broken.
cracks. So, but you
Anyway,
can't take the battery out. It's one of those phones.
that was Ben's excitement for the last few days. He's been waiting for the mail.
I bit the bullet, as they say.
You did?
Bite the bullet. What does that phrase mean? Like you didn't really want to do it, but you just have to do it.
Well, I think it came
Like when
from
you
they used to do surgery without
oh yeah, when you
anesthetic.
amputate, you gotta bite the bullet while they cut your leg off. Well, it didn't cut.
I think copious amounts of whiskey may have been involved with the bite the bullet method
So
also.
this new phone did not cost me an arm and a leg, but I bit the bullet anyway.
Hey, that was pretty good. You did combine those
What
two.
can I say? So,
Um,
let's talk about the Torah portion. We can call it a night.
sure. It's a night,
It's a night.
whether we call it one or not.
So this we actually discussed the Torah portion on Friday, and I left my Bible in the car, and I was actually kind of happy with myself because I could recount what we talked about in the Torah portion just from what what we talked about.
This Torah portion is also known as the most awkward Torah portion in the entire Bible.
Basically, it's the one where they go through the list of all the
Intimate relationships
intimate
you shall not have.
relationships. Yeah,
Yeah.
close neighbors, relatives, animals, so on and so forth.
I don't think it said anything about close neighbors,
Close relatives.
close relatives.
And basically, it's why should I shouldn't have to tell you these things is what it
Yeah,
is.
at one point God says, "You shall not have relations with the wife of your father. She belongs to your father." You can almost hear God saying,
Come on.
"Don't do that.
Well, he also says
She
that
belongs to your father."
you shall not do the things the Egyptians do, and you should not follow the laws of Canaan.
You shall not be. Well, he says, the people of Canaan, he gets done listing all these really depraved things. And he says, now the people of Canaan do all these things. And because of that, the land is going to vomit them out.
Right. And that's an interesting phrase, vomit them out. Basically, the land is going to kick them out, and not
Right.
because of anything they're doing to the land. It's the moral depravity of the people.
It's interesting that when we've mentioned this thought, uh, people's mind immediately goes to, because we are so conditioned in our society
We are conditioned.
to be sensitive to environmental issues. You say the land is going to throw you out, and people start saying things like, "Well, we misuse the land. We dig it up and we do this and we do that and we're fracking." And somebody told us, "Yeah, we mine for gold using chemicals and we're fracking the oil and we're doing this and that." It's like God never mentioned using the resources of the land as the reason the land was going to throw the people out. He mentioned aberrant, deviant sexual behavior.
Right. It's moral behavior that causes the land to
Right.
kick you out.
And it wasn't just any moral. It wasn't, he didn't mention this in the context of stealing,
Mm-mm.
and he didn't mention it in the context of murder, and he didn't even mention it in the context of idolatry.
No.
He mentioned it in the really depraved interpersonal relationships that the Canaanites were having.
It's almost like the land was disgusted that this was happening there, and it's like the land will eventually kick them out. It sort of reminds me of the promise made given to, is it to Abraham? About It was a prophecy about how your descendants will be in Egypt. Remember that?
And God said, the evil, excuse me, oh, keep yawning. The evil of the Canaanites is not yet at its peak,
So
or some such thing.
he actually gives a date or a time. He says 400 years. So it's almost like he is giving a timeline, saying, "Okay, I'm going to tolerate this depravity for only so much longer." And I'm presuming that within that time frame, they had the opportunity to repent. God always gives the opportunity to repent. And I'm sure that there was another plan in mind if they had, you know, but they didn't.
They did not repent.
They didn't repent, and the land vomited them out. And the warning was also given to the Israelites, because if you come into the land and you commit adultery and you commit these abominations,
The land will throw you
the
out.
land will throw you out too. And it did.
It did eventually.
It did.
What I was struck by with this, though, is that as Christians, we have this ongoing conversation all the time about how the laws that God gave Moses are done away with. They are no longer of any binding importance to Christians. And we also have this tendency to divide up the laws that God gave into what are called moral or ceremonial, or was there a third one? Or is it just the moral laws or the ceremonial laws? Christian thought being that moral laws are always enforced, but ceremonial laws are done away with for sure.
But where do you draw the line?
It's very difficult to draw the line, though, because a lot of the laws have both moral and ceremonial significance. For instance, right in the middle of all these commands about the relationships you shall not have, one of the commandments is you shall not have a relationship with a woman during her time of the month.
Mm-hmm.
Now, most people today would not say that that is a moral issue.
It's just a ceremonial thing.
That might be disgusting.
That's a clean and unclean
But they
thing.
would have said that's a clean and unclean thing. That's a ceremonial issue. It makes you ceremonially unclean. But God included it as a moral issue.
Mm-hmm.
And when I think about his phrase, "the land shall throw you out," it illustrates the fact that God is speaking of his ways. When he gave the law to Moses, he was simply illustrating, this is my creation, this is how it works. These are the things you may do, these are the things you may not do. And if you work against God's creation itself will reject you.
Well, it also shows who owns that creation. You
Well,
know,
creation works by God's ways.
it does.
So when Jesus said, until heaven and earth pass away.
Hmm.
Not a jot or tittle of this law will pass away. The heaven and earth is built on the foundation of God's laws.
It is. And it responds. It's almost like, doesn't Paul talk about creation groans,
Yes.
awaiting the day? Because creation wants righteousness in its land. It doesn't want wickedness in its land. It wants pure people, clean people, people who respect the Creator, because the land is created just like we are.
And this has nothing to do with sustainable living
No.
or environmental consciousness. See, today we hear that idea of you have to live properly or the land will vomit you out. And like I said, people's minds immediately go to environmental issues.
But the irony is that there are people who live depraved lives and basically will defend it to the death almost, and will at the same time be all about sustainability, all about environmentalism, all of the save the planet stuff.
Because the truth is, what's happening is people are worshiping the earth. They're worshiping the creation instead of the God of creation. And the God of creation cares a lot more about you having deviant relationships with other people than he cares about, from what I hear, than he cares about whether or not you are living sustainably.
Right. And the sustainable living is almost a religion all of its on its own.
Right.
It has its own measure of faith that's required, and its own tenets, and its own form of righteousness that's obeyed. And it's ironic that that's not what's going to get you kicked out of the land. I mean, you may get kicked out of the land regardless of your environmentalism or
Right.
sustainability, because it's going to be your behavior, it's your moral character.
Right. And to me, the way that God was phrasing the land itself is going to throw you out. I looked at our land, and we have signs that our land is trying to throw us out.
It is.
I mean, to the point where the food that we are growing in the land has become tainted and causes us illnesses.
And there are moral things that we do. I mean, things that we don't think of farming as being a moral or immoral thing, right? But God actually places certain regulations on how to do it correctly according to His will. And if you don't abide by that, there will be consequences.
Like letting the land rest. Now, it is true that God set up a framework that he meant to have happen in the land he was giving to his people.
Mm-hmm.
But I would think that if that land can throw you out if you don't treat it
Any
properly,
land could.
it's the earth itself that can. For some reason, the earth has some ability to reject people if they live apart from the law God founded creation on.
So on Friday, I pointed out that, well, there's a couple thoughts, but I pointed out on Friday that the people of Israel were not keeping the 7-year sabbatical year for the land. God commanded that you work 6 years in the land, and then on the 6th year you'll get a double harvest, and then you'll have enough for the following year. And they were not doing it. They were harvesting and working and still continuing during that rest, that year of rest. So when 70 of those Sabbaths were missed, it accumulated enough that the land vomited them out, so to speak. They were conquered by the Babylonians. And it's no coincidence it was exactly 70 years that they were in exile.
They needed the 70 Sabbaths to be. God said the land will finally have the rest it was
It's
supposed
almost
to have.
like, God set up a covenant between himself and the land. He created the earth and he set up a covenant. We see it in the rainbow, right? God set up that covenant not between man.
I will never destroy the earth again with a flood.
It's going to be a covenant between God and the earth. So it's almost as if he set up covenant, he set up these rules, and now the land is owed its rest, and the people have to accommodate, and God will make it so they have to. So that's, again, going back to the idea of being ejected from the land. But then you can expand that all the way out, because we have 6,000 years of working the land, right? And then you have 1,000 years where the land is owed its rest for 1,000 years.
And then it gets destroyed.
And then, yeah, it gets destroyed, pretty much. Well, we don't know. I mean, it talks
I
about the
don't know
new
what it means
heavens.
about a new heaven
new heavens and new earth.
No.
It's a whole new thing. But it gets its rest. So it's a very interesting thought to me.
Yeah, it was buried right in the middle of all the, like I said, the most awkward chapter. Is it Leviticus 17 and 18?
Leviticus 16. The other thing that's odd is that if you're gonna separate moral commandments from ceremonial commandments, the whole Torah portion starts with the Day of Atonement and how the priest starts off with Nadab and Abihu are dead. They offered the strange fire and they were killed, and Aaron was commanded not to mourn for them. So then explicit instructions are given as to how to enter into the presence of God in the Holy of Holies. And it's very, detailed. It's all ceremonial stuff that
Hmm.
requires a temple, requires a priesthood, so on and so forth. So we can say, as Christians, we might say, "Well, that's all done away with. That's all not relevant to me." But then immediately after that, it starts talking about obviously depravity and behavior that
It's
we would find any decent person would find abhorrent.
We find it abhorrent today for the
Abhorrent.
most part.
So
Society frowns upon the behavior that is mentioned.
so clearly that is moral law. That's labeled there. Obviously, I mean you shouldn't even need to have it said, but
And
it's said.
like we said, some of the ways God said it, it's like you shouldn't need to be told this. But a lot of it is, it's very depraved things. You shall not have a relationship with a mother and her daughter.
But then it goes on to talking about, like she said earlier, about clean and unclean. As far as time to
Right.
have relations. So
And
you
the clean and unclean is mixed in with all the things that we would say normally are moral, or are very moral
So
things.
if you want to take the scissors and start cutting out the moral law and the ceremonial law and, work it out that way,
It's going to be like confetti.
it's going to be like confetti because you're going to have to divide up that Torah portion into little bits and pieces between, dividing between moral and ceremonial law. And wouldn't it be easier just to say it's all law?
It is the law of creation. It is God's ways. These are just God's ways that He has detailed for us, so we have some concept of what He made to be.
And if a king sets up laws for his kingdom and then something changes where maybe a law or two are annulled because of, changes that have happened. Okay. But why would a certain type of law be taken away and another type of law be maintained?
The more I think about the concept that, well, there's a moral law and a ceremonial law, there is no biblical basis for this thought. It's an
Yeah.
idea that's been invented to try to get us out of the difficulty that if the law is done away with, well, then it must be okay to commit adultery now.
Yeah, how are we going to be decent
And
people?
all of
What's the
us
standard?
know, anybody who believes in Messiah and believes in the Father knows you can't just go steal from your neighbor now because Jesus died. You
Right?
can't go murder somebody because Jesus died. Now, some people have said, well, Jesus reinstituted or instituted a new law, and it's the law of love. So if you can murder your neighbor while loving them, by all means, go right ahead. So,
You could argue that killing your neighbor is the loving thing to do
well, people have argued that killing their babies is sometimes a loving thing to do
because
because
you don't
I
want to
wouldn't be a
bring them
good
into the
parent
world.
and I'm very poor and I have this problem and that problem, so the loving thing to do is to kill this child. So I'm not sure that well, first of all, I don't think Jesus was instituting a new law at all.
No,
He was simply pointing out the basis for the laws. Even though he said, well, a new law I give you, but it wasn't new.
no. It was from the beginning.
It was from the beginning that God expected this of his people, and you can tell by the way that he reacts to the coldness of people during Noah's time and the way he reacts to Cain killing
Hmm.
Abel. God expected his people always. He expected people to love each other.
Yeah.
That's not a new commandment. But the commands that God gave Moses, if you slice and dice them up because you say, well, some of these are clearly still in order, basically you're taking it upon yourself to divide the law that God gave, that
Hmm.
God spoke, instead of accepting that the whole law is what God gave and it was good and it is good in its entirety. And if there's things that you cannot do, well, that's God's business. He's put you in a place where you cannot do those things, but that doesn't make them irrelevant or unnecessary.
You're taking God's words and you're basically pointing at some and saying that's relevant and that's not relevant.
Or it's only relevant for the Jews, but it's not relevant for us. Well, if God's detailing his ways,
Hmm.
it does not matter who you are. If you want to worship the God of creation, you better listen to what the God of creation said he wanted done.
That is one of the things that came up also about the feasts. The last day of the festival. Basically, this is a so we're starting over because our hard drive filled out in our iPad, so we deleted a whole bunch of stuff. So anyway, I'm just going to complete my thought and say goodnight. So we're not farmers, and the question is why? What is the relevancy of these dates for us?
Dates of Passover and unleavened bread and the
Passover,
things that
unleavened bread,
revolve around a harvest.
the festival of first fruits. The obvious answer is Messiah, obviously. But there's other Sabbaths, like the Sabbath we just experienced on Friday, creating a double Sabbath. What about those? And I think the answer is time. God wants us to mark the time because that's the first step to keeping the feasts is remembering and acknowledging. Remember the time, acknowledge the time, and as far as practices to do on those days, we don't have the sacrificial system in place. We can't offer the prescribed offerings at the temple and things like that. But we can remember the time, and it's the best way to start and to practice because perhaps someday, God willing, we'll be entered into the land and we'll be able to do all the things that God's prescribed for us to do.
And Messiah will have come back.
Mm-hmm.
Things will be made whole. And in the meantime, this is why Paul said, these things are a shadow of what is to come. We're often told you should not celebrate these things because it's just a shadow. But the way I read that is, don't let people judge you for keeping these things. These things are a shadow of what is to come. In other words, you are looking forward to what will be in the kingdom that is coming. So don't give up on them. Don't let people judge you for keeping them. Don't be
Mm-hmm.
embarrassed out of it.
Right.
Don't be shamed by this. Don't let people judge you. Do these things because these are a shadow of what is to come, and the fullness is in Messiah.
So we remember them and we keep them, we acknowledge them, and perhaps someday we'll be able to follow them according to God's commandments. So I think that kind of completes our thought for the Torah portion. I think it's probably a good opportunity to say so long.
Good night, everybody.
Shalom.